Okay, so I'm here in Buenos Aires speaking with Armando Armas and Freddy Guevara. We're at a reunion of the Draper Hill Summer Fellows program at Stanford University, and we're really going to try to probe a little bit about the situation in Venezuela. So can you just briefly say what you're doing right now in relation to Venezuelan politics? Why don't we begin with you, Armando?
Yeah, well, December 2015, I got elected, as Freddy did so as well, to be members of Congress, members of National Parliament. We have a unicameral parliamentary system, and there are 112 of us, of opposition, out of 165. I represent the 4th district of Anzoátegui State. Freddy and I we were among the most voted congressmen.
Mm-hmm.
He was the most voted congressman in our parliament. I was the 8th, and we're representing our districts and our party, Popular Wills, Voluntad Popular, which is the party of Leopoldo López,
mm-hmm.
the in-prison leader of the opposition.
And what's your position in the
vice president of the?
I'm the vice president, the vice chairman
mm-hmm.
of the Defense and Security Committee, mm-hmm. and I also chair the International Humanitarian Justice, International Humanitarian Affairs,
mm-hmm.
and Human Rights subcommittee on the Defense and Security Committee.
And Freddy, your position?
I'm also a member of the Venezuelan Parliament and president of the Public Accountability Committee. I don't know what's
mm-hmm.
the name in other countries, but it's
mm-hmm.
against corruption.
Mm-hmm.
And in the party, I am the transitional. No, transitional is not the word. I am the one that is in charge of the party while Leopoldo
mm-hmm.
is in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Our party, we have our hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Leopoldo was the first one, is leader of the party, but he was the first one that has the command of the party. The second one was Carlos Vecchio.
Mm-hmm.
He's Carlos Vecchio, but he's in exile now.
Mm-hmm.
And I am the third one, so I am now directing, coordinating the party. And while Leopoldo is in jail and Carlos Vecchio is in exile.
So right now there's a stalemate, right? That you guys were elected, the opposition holds majority in the Congress, but the Maduro government is behaving in an increasingly authoritarian way, basically ignoring anything that comes out of the Congress. How does this get resolved? What options do you have for actually producing some kind of democratic accountability in this system?
Well, I believe that we reach a dead end, and we have only one way, is to produce a mass pacific civic revolution of people in the streets that makes the government to understand that they don't have enough force
mm-hmm.
to stop the change.
Mm-hmm.
So we would like. We used to think that the institutional way will work. That's why we went to the elections in the parliament. But everyone knows what is happening. He's by the control of the judiciary system. He's blocking all of the laws that we're doing, all of the competence that we have.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most dangerous one is that he eliminated the constitutional competence that the assembly has to stop the emergency states. So now he only by a decree can reduce constitutional rights without having the permission of the National Assembly and things like that. And he's trying to block a referendum.
Mm-hmm.
We want and we chose as an opposition democratic coalition
mm-hmm.
that we're part of. We chose a constitutional mechanism that we have in our constitution
mm-hmm.
that enables the population to to vote at the midterm of the presidency if we want the president to stay in power or not. We did it, we are doing it, but they are blocking off the way. So this gets me to my first answer. Right now, we really believe that the only way that we're going to make an electoral or democratic transition is if we lead and campaign the people in order to demonstrate a big force, non-violent and civic, demonstrations that makes them do one of two things: or let the people vote in the referendum, or resign from the power of the president.
But Armando, you are telling me that people are just too busy surviving from day to day to really be mobilized. I mean, maybe you could describe or give a little bit of the color of what life is like in Venezuela right now.
It's a way of political and social control. Specifically, the regime uses food shortages and economic crisis and underemployment and social programs and benefits in order to control society, but as well is using pacts with the organized crime, and which is run from the penitentiaries all around the country, in order to submit the people through fear. It's the only way they have nowadays to submit the people of Venezuela. Through, on the one hand, using fear, on the other hand, using economic stagnation, economic crisis, specifically using food shortages, because when they regulate the price and they have their own state-owned establishments to distribute food, people are trying to get as much as they can, either to eat or to sell it in the black market so they can survive. So the situation is quite critical back home nowadays, and people, it's between the choices between it's managing the choices between survive, to eat and give their family and their household enough food to survive, or to fight from freedom and democracy.
And you have to add to that, the electrical crisis. In the capital is not that harder, but in the provinces of the country is it's a very big problem. We have also water problems in all of the country, and you have to add that the insecurity that we have now. So it's like a mix of all of the bad things that can happen, and the people are like, the Maslow pyramid?
Yes, the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
The base.
So this is not a really great sustainable political model that they've got going, and you would think that there would be some, there've got to be some cracks in the regime. Most authoritarian regimes, it's because of internal divisions that they start disintegrating. Do you perceive any such divisions between the Chavistas, the army, factions within the ruling party?
Yes, there are definitely factions. Yet, to my mind, regimes like this, which are undemocratic, they use economic crises in order to entrench in power. Cuba did so.
But you have now, I will mention 4 big manifestations of internal crisis. 5. 4 deserters, and 5 in that are still. The 5th is an actual fight that is occurring now. The first one of them is it's a party that came, dividing the political party of the government. That it's called Socialist Wave.
Socialist Wave. Yeah,
Socialist Wave, something like that. And they say that
Socialist Tide.
Socialist Tide, yeah.
Socialist Tide.
So they were people that were like a group of intellectual people, the part of the intellectuals that followed the Chavez model, but they they separate themselves. They still defend Chavez, but they say that all of Maduro's fault now.
And more Marxist dogmatic.
Yeah,
right?
they're more dogmatic. But
they're more dogmatic.
so you have that you have former high officials. You have the former Ministry of Education, the former Ministry of Finance, and you have the former Ministry of Internal and Security. That this last one is a military. It's a military that was one of the biggest heads of the repression 2 years ago. So 2 years ago he was defended by blood with the blood of the Venezuelans, the Maduro's regime, and now he speaks publicly against Maduro's regime. You have the fourth one. It will be the militaries.
Generals. Yeah.
Generals. Now you have the last thing that occurs that a former high top general that it's called Cliver Alcalá. He was one of the tops of military from Chavez regime. He did a public interview. He's not a military now. He's retired, but retired like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. He did a public interview saying the hardest things about the government and saying that he would like to have the referendum and he will vote against Maduro. And actually he did a pretty dangerous thing. From my way, I think that maybe he tried to legitimize another coup, because he said you have to read the letter that Chavez wrote to justify his coup d'etat in 1992. If you read it now, you will find that the situation is worse. So that's a very dangerous statement from a military official. And the fifth indicator that we have is that you have now like a small group of people that it's governing. It's very small. I believe that there are 7 people. Maduro, Diosdado, that he was the former president of the National Assembly, Maduro's wife, Sila Flores, Jorge Rodriguez, the mayor of the capital, of the capital of the capital, and Tarek El Aissami, a governor of a state, and Aristobulo, who is the vice president, and
Elias Hawa, maybe?
Yeah, Elias Hawa is a very radical one from the left part of the government, more Cuban. So, but the other day occurred 2 things very strange. The first one was Maduro called the former president Rodriguez Zapatero to go to Venezuela to start a dialogue. The exact same day when the president Zapatero spoke to us as a opposition, and we gave him the yes in order to start a dialogue. And by the way, we are very skeptical about that. Skeptical about that. The same day, Diosdado said, we are never going to talk or dialogue with the right. And he orders the detention of the chief of security of the president of the National Assembly. 2 days later, an
a prosecutor,
that people say that there were more from the Maduro side, says that security guy has to be liberated. So they delivered that order, but the security force that held him didn't obey it because they only follows command from Diosdado. So that's the thing. So you're seeing now, even in the top, like
there's not a monolithic. There's not
contradictions that they have.
A monolithic regime.
They have contradictions about the way to going out. So, of course, I believe that is one of the final signs that you find when a regime is about to collapse.
Okay. There's no such a thing as a monolithic regime nowadays. And Maduro is not governing as a whole the country. So everybody's like taking some chunks of bureaucracy or decision making. Is not unified. Is maybe working through internal cartels or something like that.
So I guess the thing that we all have to hope for is that assuming this regime really does collapse, that somehow it's not going to collapse in a fit of violence with people taking up arms against each other.
And there are people, I don't believe arms, because when you speak about a civil war, you need two parts that have guns. We don't have guns, and our population doesn't have guns. Maybe you can speak about a massacre. That is another thing.
It's scary, but there are hopeful, elements in it. So, from my standpoint, I can only wish you luck in actually bringing democracy back to Venezuela, and I really appreciate you speaking to me.